The morning of March 7th, 2025 seemed like any other at Gunyah Beach, in Bundeena, a peaceful coastal village south of Sydney. The sky was clear, the tide was low, the sound of the waves steady and hypnotic. It was the kind of day no one expects time to stop. But that's exactly what happened. Zhang, 57 years old and a local resident, was swimming alone as she often did. She was about 10 meters from the shore. She breathed deeply, moved slowly, and felt in her body the lightness of belonging to the sea. For her, swimming there wasn't about exercise. It was a ritual, a form of reconnecting with the silent cities tend to erase. 5 more minutes, and I'll head back, she thought. It was a calm morning. The sea seemed safe, but nature never announces what's about to happen. Suddenly, something touched her. First, a pressure, then a pain. Not a surface sting. It was deep, tearing, as if an invisible blade had sliced through her from within. The pain shot up her thigh like fire. She tried to turn, but the water around her had already changed color. "This can't be what I think it is," she murmured to herself. "It must be a jellyfish. It has to be just that." But the red spreading around her said otherwise. So much blood. Thick. Dark. What's happening to me? The question invaded her mind like a scream. She tried to swim. 1 stroke, 2, but her right leg was useless. It was as if it had disconnected from her body. She began to sink slightly. Her heart raced. "No, not here, not now," she screamed. On the sand, Blake Donaldson heard it. It wasn't an ordinary scream, not surprise. It was the scream of someone hovering between life and death. He turned to his partner, Melchert. No words were needed. He simply ran, grabbed his stand-up paddleboard and plunged into the water. "She's bleeding. She's far out. But I can reach her," he repeated to himself while paddling hard. The distance seemed to stretch with each stroke. The red stain in the water was visible, terrifying, but he didn't stop, didn't hesitate. As he got closer, he saw Manny, with her face just above the surface, arms struggling to stay afloat. Her eyes locked with his. They were the eyes of someone who knew this might be the last moment. "Don't let me go," they seemed to say. "I've got you. You're going to be okay." "I've got you," Blake said, breathless. He pulled her onto the board carefully, feeling her blood warm against his arms. Her body was light, almost weightless, as if the sea itself was already trying to take her back. He paddled hard. Every motion was a refusal of fear, a defiance of failure. Not now, not while she's still breathing. On the beach, Ellen was already moving. She ran to the car, grabbed towels, called emergency services. When she saw them approaching, she ran toward the water. The wound on Manny's leg was deep, around 38 centimeters, caused by a bull shark. The flesh was torn, the bleeding relentless. Manny was conscious but in shock, her skin pale, her breathing shallow, her eyes distant. Ellen knelt beside her, pressing the towels firmly against the wound. Her hands trembled, but her voice stayed steady. "Stay with me. Breathe. You're safe now," she whispered, more to herself than to Manny. Time felt suspended. The waves kept breaking. The sky stayed blue. But on that stretch of sand, a silent battle was underway. Minutes later, a helicopter approached. Its sound sliced through the air like a blade. Paramedics descended quickly. They stopped the bleeding with emergency gear, stabilized Manny, and airlifted her to a hospital in Sydney. Hey, if you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next video. That's how you support the Australian people on their path toward a better future. Your support means everything. Now, back to the story. At the hospital, she was rushed into surgery. Doctors described the blood loss as catastrophic. If she had arrived 2 minutes later, someone muttered in the hallway. But Manny survived. Days later, still in recovery, she asked to see the 2 people who saved her. "I want to thank them," she told a nurse. "They saved me." When Blake entered the room, she looked at him directly. Her voice was weak, but her gaze said everything. "You went into that water for me. You didn't know me, and still you went." Blake hesitated. The scene in the ocean still haunted him. But something about that woman lying there alive disarmed him. "I just did what needed to be done," he said honestly. She held his hand. The tears came. "Thank you for not letting me go." The story spread across the country. It was the subject of news stories, interviews, and national debate. The program 60 Minutes Australia interviewed all three. They showed footage of the beach, the board, the sea, the rescue. In the interview, Blake said, "When I saw the blood, I knew it was serious. I didn't think twice. I just thought, if I don't go now, she's not going to make it." Ellen, her voice trembling, recalled, "I just knew she needed us. I pressed the towels and prayed the helicopter wouldn't be late." Manny, stronger now, stated, "They saved my life. I don't remember everything, but I remember his hand, her voice, and that I'll never forget." Recovery was long. The leg healed slowly, but the hardest part was the mind. The fear, the memory of that moment. The sound of the sea turned threat. She took deep breaths and thought, "I came back. I'm still here, and that's enough for now." One day, she returned to the beach. She walked slowly to the edge of the water. The sun was softer, the sea clearer. Her scar still hurt, but something inside her didn't hurt anymore. The silence. "You won't take me from myself," she whispered, and the sea this time stayed silent. The sea had nearly taken her, and yet there she was again, facing it, standing barefoot at the edge of the same shoreline that once threatened her life. Zhang breathed in the salt air like it was proof of something larger than survival. Her foot sank slightly into the wet sand. The tide was calm, the water crystal clear, and the silence. It was no longer threatening. It was waiting. No one had asked her to come back. No doctor had encouraged it. But something in her refused to let fear be the last chapter. So here she was, scarred, steady, and unfinished. She had chosen to return quietly. No press, no fanfare, no dramatics. Just a woman walking back into the place where she almost died. She stepped forward. The water kissed her ankles. A chill climbed her spine, not from the cold, but from memory. She closed her eyes and let it come. The pressure, the pain, the helplessness, the roar of her own blood in her ears, and then the voice, "I've got you," and the hands, the strong grip on her arms, the push onto the paddleboard, the rhythm of Blake paddling, the shouts on shore. Ellen's voice, calm but urgent, "Stay with me, breathe. You're safe now." She remembered it all, not as a blur, but as fragments that returned in sharper focus with each step she took toward healing. At the hospital, recovery had been slow. The wound was deep, nearly 38 centimeters, torn through by the powerful jaws of a bull shark. Surgeons worked for hours to close it, to stabilize her. For days, she drifted between pain and exhaustion. Monitors beeped. Morphine dulled her thoughts. Machines buzzed, nurses whispered, but the real work began once the silence returned, once the room emptied, and only she remained. "Why did I live?" she asked herself once, staring at the hospital ceiling. She didn't say it aloud. It wasn't a complaint. It was a question loaded with weight. So much blood, so much time lost. Why had her story been allowed to continue when others might not have been so lucky? The answer didn't come then. It would come later, in pieces, in the face of those who stood by her, in the hands that held hers, in the presence of those who didn't owe her anything but stayed anyway. Blake and Ellen. They had visited after the surgery, quietly, humbly, no expectations, just concern. "I'm glad you're okay," Blake had said on that first visit, sitting by her bed, unsure of what to say. "You saved my life," she answered. He shook his head. "I just did what anyone would do." She had wanted to believe that, but she didn't. "Most people freeze," she said. "You didn't." He didn't argue. He just looked down, folded his hands, and nodded. There was no need to say more. Some moments are carried in silence. As her body healed, so did her understanding of what had happened. Not just the event, but the depth of it, the layers, the truths beneath the surface. This was no accident. It was a collision of instinct, fear, courage, and sheer human presence. The footage aired on 60 Minutes Australia weeks later. It showed everything: the beach, the blood in the water, the rescue. It showed her stretchered into the helicopter. It showed Blake describing the moment he saw the red cloud in the surf. "I didn't think," he said in the interview. "I just went. I remember paddling harder than I ever had. The water got darker the closer I got. When I saw her face, I knew this is real. This is life or death." Ellen's voice was steadier, but not without emotion. "I knelt down and pressed the towels onto her leg. I remember thinking, this is someone's daughter, someone's friend, someone's whole world. I couldn't let her go." Manny watched the broadcast from her hospital room. The sound was low. The lights dimmed, and still, every word sank in like thunder. She didn't cry, she just whispered, "They didn't run." That stayed with her, because in those moments when the primal fear rises, some freeze, some flee, but a rare few run in. Blake ran in, and that mattered. After discharge, her life became a balance of therapy and introspection. The wound left her with limited mobility. Each day, she tested her strength, first sitting, then standing, then walking. There were tears, not from pain, but from frustration. "I used to swim that whole bay," she muttered once, gripping her walker. Her physiotherapist, calm and steady, only replied, "You will again. Maybe not the same way, but you will." And she believed it, because each scar, each limp, each wince wasn't just a reminder of what had happened. It was proof of what she had survived. She journaled, not out of habit, but necessity. She wrote about the beach, about the attack, about the moment she realized she might not make it. "I thought I was going to die," she wrote one night, "but even then, part of me wasn't ready." She didn't know where that part came from. Was it willpower? Was it instinct? Or was it simply the presence of someone else who refused to let her go? She kept returning to that question. What made Blake act? She asked him directly one afternoon, sitting on a bench outside the rehab center. "You could have waited, called for help. What made you go in?" He paused. "I just couldn't watch it happen," he said. "Not if there was a chance to stop it." She nodded. That was enough. And Ellen? She was there too, always in the background, steady, holding towels, dialing numbers, compressing wounds. "I don't know how you kept calm," Manny told her once. "I didn't," Ellen replied, "but calm was what you needed, so I gave it." That stuck with Manny. Not all heroes act loudly. Some act in whispers, in hands that don't shake, in words that come when others freeze. Manny had lived because of both of them, because of Blake's action and Ellen's control, because of timing, because of chance, because of something unnameable. The days grew longer, her steps steadier, the scar less raw. One morning, without telling anyone, she returned to Gunyah Beach. She stood alone at the shore. The tide was calm, the morning haze rising. She stepped into the water slowly until her ankles were submerged. "I'm still here," she whispered, and the sea this time did not answer with fear. It just held her. She returned again, and then again. What had once been the site of horror became, slowly, a place of confrontation. Not with fear, but with memory. Each step into the water, each glance at the tide, each breath filled with salt and wind was a way of reclaiming her life on her own terms. There were still aches in her leg. The scar remained. At times, it itched from the nerves, trying to reconnect. At times, it burned. But that wasn't what she remembered first anymore. What came first now were the sounds. The voice that said, "I've got you." The calm in Ellen's whisper. The thump of helicopter blades. The stillness of the hospital room after surviving something so close. She still didn't call herself brave. She rarely used that word, but others did. The local news followed up with her months later. National outlets reran the 60 Minutes Australia feature. People reached out, survivors, nurses, strangers. One letter stood out. A woman who had lost her son to a similar attack wrote, "Seeing you alive gave me comfort I didn't know I needed. I don't know why, but it helped me breathe again." Manny held the letter for a long time, then folded it, not to hide it, but to hold it close. Blake and Ellen stayed in her life, but not as heroes, as people, as themselves. The three shared something private, an invisible thread of memory that few others would ever fully grasp. She saw Blake one afternoon, sitting by the beach. He wasn't surfing, just watching the water, his shoulders slightly hunched. The same quiet man, still carrying the weight of that morning. She sat beside him. He didn't look over. "Does it still come back?" she asked. He nodded. "Not always, but when it does, it's clear. The blood, the fear." She didn't answer at first. "Then, I remember your hands more than the water." He looked at her then. "You remember that? I'll always remember." And they left it there. The story had gone quiet in the news. Another headline faded, but for the three of them, it hadn't ended. Not really. It just changed form. Every time Blake touched the paddleboard, there was a flicker of memory. Every time Ellen walked the shoreline, there was a moment she paused and listened. And every time Manny took another step into the water, into a crowded room, into the morning, it was with a shadow of what almost was, and a certainty of what still is. She gave one public talk, just one, at a local community hall in Sydney, 6 months after the incident. There were no lights, no stage, just folding chairs, a microphone, and people listening. She stood with a walking stick in one hand. Her voice was soft but unwavering. "I was attacked by a shark," she began. "But that's not the most important thing that happened to me this year." She paused, let the weight settle. "The most important thing was that someone heard me scream and came." She told the story simply, no embellishment, just the facts. "The water was red. I thought I was going to die, and then someone reached out." She didn't name Blake or Ellen in that moment. She didn't have to. They were there, sitting quietly in the audience. Sometimes we ask, where is humanity going? I don't have that answer, but I do know this. On a quiet beach in Bundeena, humanity showed up, and because of that, I'm still here. The room was silent for several seconds. Then applause, not thunderous, but steady, full, real. After the talk, she didn't speak to many. She didn't want interviews. She walked slowly to the back of the hall, where Blake and Ellen stood waiting. None of them spoke right away. Then Ellen said, "You told it right." Blake just nodded. "You're strong." Manny smiled, tired. "So are you." They walked outside together. No cameras followed, just the night, just breath, just three people forever tied to a moment none of them could forget. Years would pass. Time would do what it always does. It would soften edges, round corners, blur details. But the core would stay. The scream, the paddleboard, the blood, the hands, the voice, the helicopter, the surgery, the silence, and the return. Because not every survival story is about winning a battle. Some are simply about choosing, again and again, not to disappear. Zhang chose not to disappear. She chose the water, she chose the scar, she chose the memory. And because of two people who acted when it counted most, she got to choose life. This is not a story of miracles. It's a story of minutes, of instinct, of courage, of pain, of decision, of hands that did not hesitate. It's a story of something rare, not a hero's journey, but a human one, real, raw, witnessed by the wind and the waves. It's not about how she nearly died. It's about how she lived, and how, on a quiet morning in March, someone ran toward the scream instead of away from it. And because of that, she is still here. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss the next video. That's how you support the Australian people on their path toward a better future. Your support means everything.